You're watching the Cannabis Broadcasting Group here at cbgtv.com.
CBG TV is the way to broadcast your message to an audience looking for your products or services. Affordable advertising, personalized campaigns, special promos, event attendance, and more. Talk to someone today, in person or by email. Find us online at www.cbgtv.com. Or you can send an email to admin@cbgtv.com. Additionally, if your phone scans QR codes, scan this one to learn more.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or cbgtv.com. The medical and health information shared does not constitute a physician-patient relationship. It is provided for general informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional care. Accordingly, you are encouraged to consult and speak openly with the appropriate care professionals.
They say when your number comes up, there's no escaping it, and you're going to die. They say when your number comes up, there's no escaping it, and you're going to die. They say when your number comes up, there's no escaping it, and you're going to die. Unless your number's 5. My number was 5. I'm stage 5. I'm a stage 5 cancer guy. And I'm not really here right now because they guaranteed I wouldn't be. So why argue with that? Just because I'm 100% healthy, why shouldn't I have a parking pass? Like a handicap parking pass. Now I'm an able-bodied person, and I don't really need one. But on the other hand, they won't take away my stage 4 category. And I have friends and loved ones, God bless them, they are asking me how I'm doing. Are you doing okay? How you making out these days? And the truth is, I'm actually making out a lot better than a lot of the people asking the question. So I'm glad they're concerned. I'm doing quite well, thanks. And I'd like to show you exactly how I was able to pull that off. You're listening to Green Crush on the Eggplant Digital Studio Network.
Break the law.
Well, we're in Toronto again at 234 King Street East, telling you why the lies from the government. You can tell by looking in their eyes, and they don't want to stop trying, but we know this is going to be the thing that turns things around. We're done with the bullshit. I was pretty happy to understand that the Al Gore hockey stick that they talk about with global warming graph goes along, and then all of a sudden the hockey stick goes up. But it's the same kind of graph observance with the legalization and illegalization of cannabis. Used to be legal. It was around for thousands of years. It was in the pyramids as a food, as a medicine. You know, those folks were around longer than we were. So if you look at the entire timeline from left to right or up and down or however you want to identify timelines, this blip, this officious fart into the freedom of the ability, and not only the freedom, the right, and not only the right, the need. The need. It's a nutritional item, folks. It's got vitamins in it. Like Sunny D, who I guess will never sponsor this show. You know, that drink, Sunny D's got vitamins in it. So does cannabis. Just like a lot of other greens you take into your system, cannabis is also a nutritional in that capacity. If you think kale's great and you love that, I'm not knocking it, but this is just better. It has more things in it, things that your body requires, and somehow we've allowed ourselves to be led by a bunch of people that choose to not know that thing. We'll touch on that later, but I want to tell you what we are and who we are. This is Green Crush coming at you from Toronto. What is Green Crush? Well, the green is cannabis, what used to be known as marijuana, when the manipulators decided to package up their bullshit in an envelope of oppression. And I'm both honored and flattered and glad to be involved in thinking about this substance when I was a very young boy, listening to the arrests on the news all those many years ago, and I was casually aware of the substance through my life, used it in my 20s, got off of it in my 30s, wasn't using it properly, it turns out, and now it's saved my life. And I can't believe that I'm sitting here talking about this substance at this time with the experience behind me that I have. If you're new to the show, what I'm going to tell you is that we have a lot of facts coming in and a lot of ways that things are that are not what you hear on the news. So they're putting up their side of the story 100%. When I say they, I mean people that don't use cannabis, and when I say they, I mean people that frown upon the cannabis use. But at the end of the day, they're feeling the pressure, so they're admitting that there is some symptomatic relief, and they are going to put up a structure of difficult laws and police enforcement to try to meet this out and alleviate the public pressure. That's all this is. This isn't to benefit you. This is because the pressure, the pushback from the illegal century or so of a wonderful substance in medicine and food has been rescinded, denied, oppressed, and hidden. And consequently, for a lot of that century, a lot of people have died unnecessarily. You wouldn't be able to quantify the amount of pain that everybody that has suffered without it has unnecessarily gone through. These are the people that take care of us, our leaders. And once again, they are trying to tell us it'll be okay if you have 30 grams on you. Anything more than that, it's tickets, it's cops, it's take your license away, get arrested, and all this kind of thing. But you can walk down the street with a cart carrying as many cases of beer as it would haul and 5 or 6 bottles of Jack Daniels and whatever else you could stuff in there, and they just wouldn't say a thing because that's legal. So the deception continues, and they continue to wallow in their pig trough of incrementalism. Boil the frog slowly. So we're here to put out the other side of the story, which is factual and data-driven. But first, I want to get our theme song out of the way in a good way. It's called The Reflection. It's by Legna Zeg, Legna Zeg. You can look them up on YouTube. All kinds of great music there. And they said it was free for the taking. And I like the way it sounded, so that's nice. That's our theme song. We have the clarity is that the green stuff crushes cancer. And therefore, it also must crush the laws that prevent access to crushing cancer. And you know what happens when you have a dam and you block that dam off and you don't let that energy flow? It's a problem, and over time the dam eventually gets weaker and it's not able to be maintained, and eventually it either breaks or they tear it down, and that force of water comes gushing out with ever so much power. And that's what's happening now with the awareness of cannabis and what it does do and what it doesn't do, and inverting the perception of what it's all about. And all of this is about perception, okay? At least that's the way I see it. And I didn't want to put all that in the title, so we just called it Green Crush. And we come at you from the Pacific Junction Hotel in beautiful downtown Toronto that is now looking like it's going to rain. So we might have to send somebody out to take care of Floyd the boy. You might find him on Instagram, Floyd the dog. So we're brought to you by Eggplant Digital Network, Canada's leading creative content hub. And we have Russell on the board, who started school today by staying here and producing the show. So that's good. Thanks. That's good school, Russell. That's what we're going to do. Is we have got a lot of subjects on the show today. We have no opioids. That's saying no to opioids. We have cops of truth. And I think we should get to that right now. But first of all, in the theme song, you might have heard someone advising you to break the law, and you might not know who that was. So I'll tell you, he's the shadow secretary for the Labour Party in England, in Parliament, stood up and told the world through English Parliament this next statement.
I think we have to say to those who put up with the barbaric stupidity and cruelty of government policy to act in a way of civil disobedience. We know most of the countries in the world.
Hang on a second. Did you hear what that guy just said? Listen to that again, because maybe sometimes when they hear a British voice and he's got that wonderful eloquence there, it seems like, what's this guy saying? He's not reciting Shakespeare. He's talking about your rights. He's talking about medicine. He's talking about the bullshit of keeping it hidden so long. And you can even hear the pigs in the background of Parliament groaning when he makes the suggestion for the obvious and the intelligent. Listen to this again.
I think we have to say to those who put up with the barbaric stupidity and cruelty of government policy to act in a way of civil disobedience. We know most of the countries in the world allow this most ancient of medicines, been used for 5,000 years in every continent in the world. It's used for medicinal purposes. Well, I would call on people, and I know we're not supposed to do this as men, but to break the law, to come here and use cannabis.
That's it. Break the law, come here and use cannabis. I would encourage people. And what I like about this, if there's any kind of twisted law in Canada where there's a fomentation charge or something, I want to try to put me in trouble or something like that. I'm quoting a British parliamentarian who's speaking the truth. So I'm not afraid of any of that. I don't think they would be able to do anything to me anyway. And even if they did, I'm sure they don't want me in a courtroom with everybody that's listening to this show so far showing up and having me explain this on the record in front of the full mainstream media. I'm sure they don't want that, and I'm sure they'll just leave me alone like some kind of freak while I continue to peel back the curtain. So before we get going with all of the stories, I will say we have a wonderful guest on today. It's a bit of a surprise. We didn't know Edward was going to be with us. Edward is a brilliant man in charge of a brand new economy in England. What? He's going to explain to us how cannabis is the substance of a new economy, a stock ticker. It's a different money. This is what the real reason is, and one of the many control-based, money-based reasons why the lies have been taking place over all of this time to make sure this stuff is not part of our makeup. But the unfortunate problem is we are supposed to have this stuff all the time, like you're supposed to have the nutrients in meat, like you're supposed to have the nutrients in dairy, and they had food pyramids and food charts, and this is how we're supposed to eat. This food has been denied us our entire lives. It's like your body is a car. You may not know how the engine works and all of the crazy overhauls they've done to automotive technology over the decades. I lost the plot somewhere around 1985 with what was going on with the robotification of cars. But you know how to change the oil, or you should. You know how to put the gas in and the wiper fluid and those basic things when you buy the car. And you need to do those things. And guess what else you need to do to the car? You do need to know that oil pan. You do need to change the oil at least once in a while, and you do need to constantly put oil in for the car to run. So we're right back to the fact that when the Rockefellers and those people back in the day were owning the oil market, and they were saying that they were oil barons and oil billionaires, they weren't just saying they were making money from the oil that goes into cars and all the plastics that later contained bisphenol A and everything else we've been toxified for. It also meant they were controlling access to the other oil, the good stuff. Controlling the oil doesn't mean just selling automotive oil, folks, but it's all coming down. It's all coming down. It's so fun to be part of it. So for our first section on the show today, this is Unblinded Me with Science, and from the Scientific American, for those of you folks like reading your mainstream, here's an article from, it doesn't seem to say when. Oh, September 1st this year, just a couple of days ago. Tantalizing clues point to inflammation's role in an array of diseases. Tantalizing clues. Okay, so pointing to inflammation, I've heard about depression coming from inflammation, all kinds of pain. Certainly when you have cannabis and you have an anti-inflammatory there, you can also load up on turmeric. There's a particular product by a scientific laboratory called Curcumatrix, and it's a very intense bioavailable anti-inflammatory in that turmeric. It's been around forever. These are the medicines that have been around forever, and then they kind of make fun of them, and you're an idiot, and they sell you a drug, and you have side effects. But these are the same people giving you antidepressants who then kill themselves and anti-anxieties who then get all freaked out about things. It actually causes, a lot of the time, they've got the whole telescope the wrong way around. They keep doing that, keep finding more proof of that. This new evidence suggests, in the Scientific American, an anti-inflammatory medication helps reduce heart attack and lung cancer risks. And then it goes into trippy 3D drawing there. Should have it on the screen today, but, tech. Anyway, inflammation has become one of the hottest buzzwords in medical science, pointed to as a culprit in causing or aggravating conditions ranging from allergy to autism to Alzheimer's disease, but it's far from clear, and a lot of other things. But it's far from clear that standard anti-inflammatory drugs, which have been around for decades, will help patients with those conditions, especially since they often come with dangerous side effects. Just going to sit on that for a minute. Dangerous side effects. So right out of the gate in this mainstream article about these proper medicines that are 100% sanctioned by the government that loves us, that tells us we can't have a plant, these things have dangerous side effects. It's like 3 sentences into this story. So in labs across the country, scientists are trying to puzzle through the basic biology, which is all done and done with the cannabis plant, but they hide the facts of it. Understanding how inflammation leads to disease and whether it's possible to develop drugs that could interrupt that process. What if you don't need to develop a drug and you've already got something that works? Oh, put a law against it. Fuck that law. Scientific American does go on to explain this. I'm not going to spend all day on one article, but check it out. Scientific American, tantalizing clues point to inflammation's role, because the point I'm trying to make here overall is that the cannabis is also an excellent anti-inflammatory drug. An anti-inflammatory application, I should say, more correctly. And you don't need these drugs, and you take the plant and you're moving on. Yep, moving on to the next story. This is also unblinded me with science. We keep hearing about how it damages the brain. It's terrible about the brain. They never provide the study that says this, or it's in contention, or it's an in-house, non-peer-reviewed paper that says so, and then the establishment clings to this. My buddy's out there getting wet. Anyway, we're live show. My dog's outside. It's starting to rain. He needs a cover. I can't believe it's raining. Anyway, this research provides data on the development of 59 Jamaican children from birth to age 5 years whose mothers used marijuana during pregnancy. Oh, a test. Let's see how it went. Approximately 1/2 of the sample used marijuana during pregnancy and were matched with non-users according to age, parity, and socioeconomic status. Testing of the children was done at 1 year old, 3 years old. 1 day, 3 days, and 30 days of age with the Brazelton Neonatal Behavioral Assessment Scales. Got to get a pair of those. And at ages 4 and 5 with the McCarthy Scales of Children's Abilities. Data about the child's home environment and temperament were collected from direct observations as well as from standardized questionnaires. So this is a well-researched study about how it doesn't really fuck up your brain that they never seem to want to put on the air. Wow. Got to get some water, folks. Hang on. Could be choking on a mulberry. I don't know. The results, let's get to that. The results show no significant differences in developmental testing outcomes between the children of marijuana using and non-using mothers, except at 30 days of age when the babies of users had more favorable scores on the 2 clusters of the Brazelton scales. Autonomic stability and reflexes. The developmental scores at age 4 and 5 years were significantly correlated to certain aspects of the home environment and to the regularity of basic school. So that's what it's about. But you hear about how terrible it is for your brain all the time, and you never hear about this Jamaican study. So thanks for the follow-up on that. That's on thctotalhealthcare.com. I do have something in my throat. Cannabis can't help that. Anyway, wow. So sticking with science, unblinded me with science. A little bit of a sidestep here, and maybe I'm going to be accused of mansplaining. But I can't change gender just to deliver a read on this next story. largest study ever done on mammograms states that they are pointless and dangerous. Well, if you've ever seen a mammogram take place, it's pointless, all right. There's nothing pointed about that. It's a pancake in a T-shirt press. Says here on healthandlovepage.com, that's all got dashes in between the words. When you want to take the precautionary measures and prevent breast cancer, you go to an annual mammogram. But more and more research proves that such a measure is pointless at best and dangerous at worst. Of course, you won't hear this from any major industry. They will do anything to deny the truth to keep this money-making method. And here's the study, the largest ever study conducted on this thing. Here we go now to the New York Times, back into the land of true news. I love how when a true story is on a website that somebody wants to get all upset about and says, oh, that's not mainstream news. And then there's still information on there that's valid, and then they still link to other things that back up the point. But they diss the site on site, basically, and they miss out on this information. So going back in time to 2014, February 11th, vast study casts doubts on the value of mammograms, and they go into great detail explaining this. I'll just give you the goods at the end, if we can zing on down to that, the results. Dr. Gallagher, whose editorial accompanying the study was titled Too Much Mammography, compared mammography to prostate-specific antigen screening for prostate cancer. Using data from pooled analyses of clinical trials, it turned out the two screening tests were almost identical in their overdiagnosis rate and had almost the same slight reduction in breast or prostate deaths. So it's a lot of work, a lot of pressure, if you do have a tumor in there, you might bust it open and send it into the rest of your body. But they don't really like to talk about that. There's that study, that's a few years ago, and people got mammograms this morning, I'm sure. So look out for that. If you get a mammogram and you find out you got cancer, you might want to look into this subject of this show, which is cannabis oil, specifically all kinds of cannabis use, but particularly the Rick Simpson oil. One plant weighs about a pound. Cook it on down with the proper solvent. You got about 60 grams of this oil. And you spread the intake of that over 90 days because you have to slowly build up your tolerance with a small dose. And then before you know it, you'll be taking much larger doses and not experiencing any kind of high at all, just the mending that puts you past stage 4 cancer like me, and you get to have a term like stage 5. That's where I want to bring everybody, to stage 5. If you haven't had an option and you don't like what's going on, or you want to mitigate some of the conventional, what would we call it, roadkill that takes place in your body and about yourself when you take in these poisons and radiations and everything else that you have to take in the moment, the cannabis will help you clear that out. But if you get the chance before that, as soon as you're diagnosed, if I were diagnosed with something, probably the treatment's not coming right away, maybe next week, the week after, maybe October. So you get on this oil right away, because when you get back in there, those numbers are going to be different, and they're going to be scratching their heads. So back to the science-y thing. What else do we have in the world as a problem right now? Well, we just had the hurricane down in Harvey down in Texas, and there was a Texas plant that exploded. They knew it was going to explode. They realized based on the flooding damage they weren't going to be able to stop it exploding. And on August 31st, 2 of those explosions rocked that plant in Arkema, Texas, causing toxic chemical fires, contaminating air and water. Sounds like a mission, hey? The company's website said the threat of additional explosions remains, and this is a normal business operating normally under the wonderful place of never having any regulations, and they've barfed all these toxins into the scene, and it's a terrible situation. And once again, oh, you're just making cannabis good at everything. You just think it's a cure-all for everything. Well, it was for thousands of years, and what I'm offering to say right now is I had the benefit of a lovely conversation today, and I was speaking with my sister, and she kind of made me realize by talking to her that while I sit here and talk about the differences between using regular oil and cannabis oil and motor oil and cannabis oil, there's this extra bonus that when the Rockefeller oil that we always use forever, and they've got a lock on the economy based on having everything almost made of a byproduct of what they have their fingers into 100%. When that's going on, you're not too happy to take into your body some of the things that are the toxic byproducts. Remember those bottles the babies were drinking from with bisphenol A, so they had to take them out? but certain big retailers were still selling the bad ones, and the new ones had stickers on them saying they didn't have those chemicals in them. And plastics and off-gassing of plastics and a lot of the uses, that new car smell is not so romantic when you realize how toxic it is. But all of those plastics can be synthesized with oil, and they are. We're just using the wrong oil, man. That's it. You're using the wrong oil. When you make a plastic out of a cannabis oil or a hemp oil, you're not going to have all those medical problems. Every way I look at this thing, I feel like I'm a sniper in the target of a bullseye, just turning around on a pivot, coming at 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock with the bullshit bombs, and we're going to blow them up here. Just like the Arkham, Texas plant that has now blown up and sent all kinds of toxic bullshit into the air, and they're all petroleum-based oils. And if that weren't the case, they'd be blowing pot oil all over the place. Wouldn't be so devastational. So now, focusing on the science angle of things, we're going to go into opioids now. This is a major crisis here and around the world. I don't know who in its entirety is profiting from it, but it's been going on forever. And that seems like forever, but over the last several months, it's just been intensifying and intensifying, and you don't need them. This is the same companies who have been making this cannabis illegal and lobbying governments. It's just easy as fall. It's like playing with Lego once you sit down in front of these pieces. You can deny it all you like. That's fun, but then you're the one with the backache and spend the entire summer in nursing your pain and not getting through it and taking these things, and then they're building up a toxic load, and maybe you're getting addicted to them. But the opioids is no fun. So don't take them. That's why I put an N in front of it. Opioids. So what are we doing here? There's a dog barking outside. It's not even mine. All right. This is from The Guardian. We're going to go back to The Guardian shortly as well. I really want to get to that, but turns out I've lost the page on that one. Gosh. All right, so don't blame the addicts for America's opioid crisis. Here are the real culprits. Now, this is an opinion piece, but it's in theguardian.com mainstream. America's opioid crisis was caused by rapacious pharma companies, politicians who colluded with them, and regulators who approved one opioid pill after another. These people who continue to lobby against cannabis doesn't have any of these side effects. Doesn't cause any of these problems, and they cite that it does when it doesn't, and then they ignore the ones that really come down with the opioids happening all the time, and they wonder, what should we do to get these bad people off of this terrible substance that we approve for profit? When we were lobbied by a pharmaceutical company in the States, there's more lobbyists per representative in the American government than the actual amount of representatives in the government. They're controlled by corporations. So the opioids that have killed more than 33,000 Americans in 2015. 33,000 Americans! Let's get the pot tally on how many people were killed. Oh, yeah, none. Antidepressants found in fish brains in the Great Lakes region. Well, we sit atop those here in Lake Ontario. This is from m.phys, phys.org. Antidepressants found in fish brains in Great Lakes region are building up in the brains of bass, walleye, and several other fish common to the Great Lakes region, scientists say. In a new study, researchers detected high concentration of these drugs and their metabolized remnants in the brain tissue of 10 fish species found in the Niagara River, heading there in October for a big marijuana conference, and the town mayor is going to be there. Hopefully we'll interview him. Or maybe it's a her, I don't know. This vital conduit connects two of the Great Lakes, Lake Erie and Lake Ontario via Niagara Falls. The discovery of antidepressants in aquatic life in the river raises serious environmental concerns. Imagine if those antidepressants weren't getting flushed into the river because those things that cause people to be more depressed than usual were actually been replaced by this fucking plant that can save your life as an oil. You got to stop making laws against this thing. You got to stop making laws against this thing. It saves lives, okay? Now, I don't know why we aren't able to attain any interest from the folks setting down the tone Like this former police chief, Bill Blair, who has always spoken out against cannabis and is somehow now standing in the center of the circus with a top hat and a cane going, hear ye, I'm going to tell you how it's going to go. No, Bill. We're telling you to go. It's different. It doesn't make any sense for a man who has profited from and drawn a salary about incarcerating people who are employing their own human right to be able to take a food, a nutrient, a medicine, and do whatever the hell they want to do with it when there's all this data about how healthy it is. And now this former police chief of a major city is on the transition team for this fucked up series of stupid laws that the liberal government of this particular country is trying to ram down our throats and make things even worse than they already are. So I'm going to have to find this this other page here. But that has to stop, okay? This is why I'm putting this show out. I'm no longer trustworthy of the ways and means of the government to lay down the law about a free substance that we all need and are supposed to have, regardless of the religious books that you tether yourselves to. And also because the justice system as it is right now is overstrained with people getting turned away. There's a lot of uncomfortable cases that have been going on where people have not been getting punished for violent crimes because the courts are full, because the police, who are acting under the rules and the laws that Justin says we have to obey the whole time until they change the laws, but then they're getting discharged by the judges. These cases are taking up officers' time. It's taking up paperwork. It's damaging the lives of the people that are charged, even though they get the absolute discharge, wasting their time. It's a bunch of bullshit. Absolute discharge for owners of raided Waterloo Dispensary. Waterloo, Ontario is in the Kitchener CTV News. From July 21st this year, the only crime committed by a couple who opened a marijuana dispensary without proper approvals was, quote, says the judge, the offense of compassion. Justice Colin Westman agreed to give Shady and Luca absolute discharges, meaning that if they do not reoffend in the next year and do this thing that they have every right to do, they will have no criminal records. So he gave them a bit of a break at the end of a series of arrests and everything else and all the things that they would have taken and absconded with. Hey, if you ever need to get a pound of pot to make the Rick Simpson oil and you don't know where to get a good pound of quality pot, I've said it before, I'll say it again, you need to get to a police evidence storage locker just before the weekend. And hurry up, because by the time you get there, there'll probably only be a couple ounces left. So stop busting people that then eventually go into the court system and take up all that time and then get tossed out. And while you're at it, this new law, Cops or Truth, we're in this segment now, this new law about how they're going to measure whether or not you're under the intoxication with cannabis. They just have these machines. A lot of people have invested into them already. And once they get sold around every police station on the planet, or whoever wants to buy these things and force down these oppressive laws telling us that just the slightest amount of cannabis is enough to ruin your day and not be able to drive properly. It's like 2 nano breaths, and it's like a half a puff on a joint that you didn't even inhale, and you're already blowing over. So what they say is being high has not been proven. The machines and the testing stamps and things you lick have not been proven. And it says here in Lyft.co, this is news.lyft.co, this is a great publication about all things cannabis, says a recent investigation from the University of Marseille and the Service de Pharmacotechnique Toxicocinétique, the Pharmacology Toxic Lab, provides new important data for this ongoing debate. Cannabis legalization poses considerable risks for drivers and policymakers, with multiple investigations converging on the conclusion that cannabis intoxication increases road traffic accidents and fatalities, likely due to a reduction in attention, reaction speed, and judgment of drivers. Countries around the globe have implemented a range of policies regulating driving under the influence of cannabis. For instance, Australia prohibits driving under any detectable level of THC, whereas Switzerland has a more lax, go figure, 2.2 nanogram per milliliter of blood. Of course, the U.S., the states have imposed limits from 0 to 5 nanograms. So it's all different levels depending where you're at. I know that you probably need a low level. You need a low level in Toronto because There's the left lane brigade. You get these folks on the highway doing the same speed as the truck in the middle lane. It just drives me crazy. Arguments for specific limits, on the other hand, are centered around pragmatic factors and finding that THC and other cannabis metabolites can remain detectable for nearly a week, definitely, after any psychoactive effects can be felt. Some concerns shared by both sides revolve around the need for blood samples for adequate ruling of intoxication. This stuff stays in your system for a long time because your system wants to hang on to it. That's why when you need meat and you can only eat it 2 or 3 times a week, you get enough and it lasts you through. So that's what that's all about. Bring it to a close. We've got to move on soon because we've got to talk to our guest now. We're going to talk to our guest now. I'm going to ding him up. And I have to confess, this is so exciting for me because I was just briefly speaking with him. And a minute ago, before we got going, this is Edward Fitzpatrick. He's in charge of a new cannabis economy. I don't know anything about it because I only found out about this last night. He contacted the show page. And
hello.
There he is, Edward Fitzpatrick. How are you today, sir?
Very good indeed, Alan. It's nice to speak to you.
It is nice. Sorry for the wait. We got held up by a couple of things, and I lost my head. But I wanted to ask you...
I've been watching the show, and I've been learning, so it's all good.
Oh, good stuff. Thanks for tuning in. So Edward is in England. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in London.
London. Yeah, I've heard of that one. And
thank you for mentioning our great MP here who was standing up for earlier in your show.
Yeah, absolutely. We feature him all the time. Can you tell us about him from the perspective of a Brit who sees him daily? Because I'd not heard of him until I'd done the research.
Yeah, Paul Flynn. He's a Labour frontbencher, so he's not a backbencher. He's a frontbencher,
right?
And he did a very, very brave thing, and that's a good thing for the country. We've also got Oxford University conducting studies right now. We've got articles in Tatler magazine. I mean, it's happening here too. All the stuff you're talking about is happening here slowly but surely.
Absolutely, yeah. So what was his record before this, or how was he perceived by the public before he came out with this break the law statement?
Well, he's a front bencher, so he's perceived, to be a very serious politician, but he is a little bit of a rebel. But then some of them are. Not all politicians are bad. No. It just seems that their honest intentions and their desires seem to get swallowed up by the machine as things move along. That's the unusual thing about Paul is he's quite an elderly gentleman, so you would have thought that if that were the case, it would have happened to him a long time ago. But I agree with you. I think they go in with great intentions, because why else would you want to be a politician, right?
Right.
They go in with great intentions, and they soon get consumed by the populace.
You don't have to dig too deep in the history, usually because, you don't have to dig too deep because they'll campaign a certain way in the election, particularly if they're kind of favorable because the home party, the existing party, is losing favor, and they say all kinds of wonderful things about the changes they'll make compared to who it is they want to replace, and then we go right back to the same very similar or identical policies in many cases. That's what's happened here in Canada with Justin Trudeau. Flipping from blue to red, it hasn't been really any kind of policy notice change whatsoever.
Yeah, it's the same here. I think it's pretty much the same everywhere. It's just a degree of the same stuff. Billy Connolly, a great Scottish comedian, said it the best. I've never voted because I don't want to encourage them.
Exactly. You're forced to participate in a scam, and it just keeps swinging like a pendulum. George Carlin over here said the same thing, and they're both gone. Or no, Billy's still here. What am I saying? But George Carlin said the same thing. You're participating in a game that's rigged. You don't really get what's done. Look what happened in the DNC. I mean, it's not American people picking. It's a company that favored a certain person. They changed the rules inside when they didn't like what was happening. I mean, that's not democracy.
No, of course not.
But we don't need to talk about democracy. I want to talk about why you were listening to us and why you liked the page. And tell us about all of your crazy numbers. I'm sure there's a lot of fun stuff in there because I say again, I haven't been able to take the time to read through everything.
Yeah, don't worry. And I'll, if you're bored at any time in your life, I'll bombard you with a bunch of stuff. But here's the way I see it. I see that all the stuff you're saying is correct, and it's all great, and I'm learning a lot from you, so I'm grateful to that. But this market is going to have to grow with some structure, and so I've got some fintech expertise, and we built a stock exchange platform for early stage companies, because I believe that's another Rockefeller nightmare out there, that they're controlled markets, and the DTC is a private corporation, as is the Fed. But and so I think the stock markets of today are not fit for purpose for early stage companies. Most companies in the cannabis space are early stage companies, and they lack some credibility because people don't know who they are, where they've come from, what they're doing, whether it's legal. There are some strange laws in the States that you can't invest in a cannabis company if you're in Colorado. If you're to Washington State, you can't. There's lots of things that you can and can't do that regulation needs to try and catch that guy or somehow stop him from doing it. But if the law's the law, then we're happy to comply with it vis-a-vis whether a guy can buy a security or not. And so what we're trying to do is bring all of those companies that are in the cannabis space and put them on an exchange where they can be rated, and they can have investors, and they can get followings, and we can have a fit for purpose ecosystem for cannabis companies.
So you had an infrastructure there that was basically the infrastructure you're talking about needs to be changed. The way if you have a gym bag and you go to the gym to work out, and then all of a sudden if you're going to buy some skis and do that, you can't put your skis in the gym bag. The whole thing has to be torn down and rebuilt.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying it has to be torn down and rebuilt. I'm saying that today's stock markets are not fit for purpose for early stage companies, and they're definitely not fit for purpose for early stage cannabis companies. And so we've built a stock exchange that's a legally verified stock exchange that allows any cannabis company, even if it's a startup, to come and list on the exchange and show itself to the world. And we've just been inundated. I mean, when I mean inundated with inquiries and positive attitudes towards what we're doing, because it's the missing piece for me. We've got no competitor in this space, although the market is growing and growing and growing. Like I say, we've got articles in Tatler magazine, and the headline is "Cannabis is a wonder substance that can help the sick and make investors very rich." That's the headline. And so, what people are reading about this, and if we want to help people like you that were sick, that got better because of something that's natural that we should be our right to use, then I think we need to bring some structure to it. We fight the naysayers by bringing corporate structure to it, because the difference today with the Rockefeller scenario that you were talking about is knowledge. He had all of the knowledge back in the day and didn't share it with anybody. Now the knowledge is everybody's. Anybody can listen to your show, anybody can pick up what you're saying, anybody can read for themselves.
Yeah, it's all there.
And I don't think that can be fought today. I think this is the time that this plan sees its natural place in society, and we want to bring some corporate structure to that to help it happen.
Well, that sounds like a good idea, and I think you're going to get both from us. You're going to get interest here from the show and questions from the show, because this sounds to me like something that we definitely need to be doing, is to be part of this particular deal, because it comes down to there's so many applications for what can be used in never mind in a leisurely capacity, but in a health capacity for cannabis, that it's just become so evident now to everybody that has their eyes open that it's a criminality if one person is told they can't access it, and so many other things disappear, and with this, so many medical conditions absolutely disappear.
The citizens respond to the challenges of the outside world and its geopolitical machinations.
You picked up a great point earlier that I'd want to use to companies that are coming to us and say, toxic plastics. So create hemp plastics, and let's go take that.
Yeah.
And so let's go build companies that make hemp plastics, and let's go break down the toxic plastics and build enormous companies out of that. You've got the ecosystem today to do it. We have a stock exchange. You have people that want to invest in this thing. You have people that want to create these things, and you definitely have people that want to buy these things. There's your market right there.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think that as soon as people realize that, as we were saying before, I mean, I said it out of my head the other day, but it turns out there is a chewing gum company. You're going to have a flooring company. I mean, you can make blinds out of it. You can make clothing out of it. Maybe you can power vehicles with it. I don't know. I mean, it's still an oil. It could be synthesized in that way, and then the byproducts aren't going to be so terrible as the oil that we're stuck with now.
Yeah. Well, you said another thing on the show, which is why I'm saying I'm grateful, because I'm listening to your show. Is on a different show you were talking about that they're figuring out now how to tax it. We need to spend more money because we've got something that's now legal and it's going to cost us more money to police it. Right. So if they figure out, but that could be a good thing. When they figure out how to tax it, that's when the problems go away from those guys. Colorado's made $500 million in tax receipts already.
Well, I think you have to look into that carefully when you set it up jurisdiction by jurisdiction, because if it gets to a certain point where the city's taxing it, the province is taxing it, the country itself, the federal, you got 3 or 4 levels of taxation, maybe there's some kind of retailer tax, then all of a sudden you got a $27 gram or a 14-pound gram. That's not going to be any good.
No, that's true too.
You're going to create this backlog of, as soon as they put a price on it, bang, you're back to the black market, whether it's a legal substance or not. We had the same thing with cigarettes in Ontario years ago when they jacked the rate up for everyone's health. They jacked up a pack of cigarettes to $10 when they were normally selling for $3 or $3.50 back in the day, and that just caused an instant black market. And then they were fighting crime constantly and spending all this money on people breaking the law. But of course, as soon as you take something that they're used to and jack the price out of it, here comes the black market. We know that's what gets made, and so do the policymakers.
Yeah, exactly.
Do it anyway.
And maybe that's why they need that extra money, because they want to get ready for the black market that they're going to create.
That's it. So what can we do to best tell us the name of your website, for example?
So right now it's Marijuana SX. I mean, we have a bunch of them, and some people are saying it shouldn't be called that, should be called Cannabis SX. But right now it's Marijuana SX. We have all the tech. You can go there right now today and open a demo account and see how you trade on the exchange.
And because I've kind of not used that word in a long time, if I could stop you, can you spell marijuana for us the way you do? It's one of those words that gets a different. It's like Omar Gaddafi when he had everybody spelled it different with a Q with a K. So give us the exact URL.
Okay, so it's MARIJUANASX.com.
Perfect. Okay, now I have it. Now everybody has it. If you didn't get it, stop and go back 30 seconds. And what did you do before you got into? How did cannabis filter into your pool of awareness? Like, what were you doing before? Were you working in the stock market anyway?
Yeah, for 30 years I've been running my own private equity fund, and so I bought this fintech thing, and I've created a bunch of different stock exchanges fit for purpose, because I can't stand that the stock exchange market today is ridiculous. And the shorting capacity is, for early stage companies to be able to short an early stage companies is just ridiculous. It's it can't withstand shorting pressure, so it's easy for people just to short the stock to zero. But behind that stock are people and lives and jobs and ideas and dreams, not to mention the investors that put money in to get them there. And so I got frustrated because I funded a lot of deals that ended up going to the OTC Bulletin Board or even the TSX, and just getting driven down to zero for no good reason other than some trader could go make some money on it. And so I didn't like that, so I created a stock exchange that you can't short. It's just an honest exchange. You can buy a security or sell a security. You can't do anything else, because it's fit for purpose for early stage companies. That's exploded in terms of its growth. We've got 1,000 companies on one exchange. We launched in 50 countries.
Wow.
We did a whole big thing, and then we got approached by some great people in the cannabis space who said, we want one for the marijuana sector or for the cannabis sector. And so we started looking into this medical marijuana space and said, wow, this thing's going to be huge. It's like the internet all over again. And so we built a fit for purpose exchange for that. So we're arguing against some of the naysayers for us that are saying you can't do it because of those issues in the US where, a guy sitting in one state can't buy a marijuana stock in another. And I say, well, this is a digitally delivered exchange. We can do anything. We can prevent that from happening. We don't have to regulate it from behind. We regulate it in front. So we can combat all of any question that anybody fires at us and says you can't do this because, we can, because we've already thought about it and it's digitally delivered. So we can combat those things much easier. That's why I think it happens now, because there's just too much information out there too easily, too readily, and we can digitally deliver something. It's a 0 or a 1. You either did it or you didn't, and the facts are in front of you. So I wasn't specifically in this sector, but I've been learning about the sector. We took on some specialists. We partnered up with some people who are in the sector, who are big growers and big producers, and they become our founding partners in the exchange. And now we're looking for some more founding partners, and it'll be launched in it'll be 4 months before there'll actually be any listings on it. But in 4 months' time, there'll be listings, and we're taking in listing agents now. We're getting companies ready to list. The site will change in the next couple of weeks so that you'll have more information. It won't just be the demo account, but you can go in and just put in a username and password, log in, get a demo account, see how it is to trade. We give you $25,000 of pretend money so you can see how well you do.
See how it goes, yeah. So this is great. You're basically building a new infrastructure or an adjunct infrastructure for the facilitation of cannabis propagation. And where do you see, like, how long has this been going on for you? And from the time you figured out to start this going, and where have you traveled to this point? And where do you see this thing a year, 2, 3, 5 down the road, or wherever you think it's going to have its most impact?
Well, I'm a big thinker, so maybe I answer that question. People think I'm nuts, but I believe this is the ecosystem that will set it apart. That will be one of the catalysts that helps the sector really explode. There was the example we just talked about with the plastics. We can push out the plastic companies and say, let's start experimenting with hemp and make a division. We've got some investors ready to go, and that growth starts to engender more growth.
Well, I want to do it like a 30s gangster when we do it. When we do it, I want to do it like a 30s gangster. We'll go old school there. We'll walk into these toxic, filthy, disgusting, fracking plastic companies and we'll say, look, this is the way we're going to do it from now on. You're going to get hemp oil and cannabis oil in there, and if you don't like it, you take a long walk off a short pier, and we just force them the way they used to do it to us all the time.
We just you and I could just make an advert video just like that. It's going to be great, or we even shoot a whole movie.
That's it. Well, we should do that. We should do that. You had me at, I have my own private equity fund. I was already impressed. You could have stopped right there, and I would have called you back next week anyhow.
Thank you.
So listen,
no, I'm excited, and I'm really grateful. I can tell you're a very knowledgeable guy. I know it's a very personal journey for you.
Oh, for sure.
You're obviously very knowledgeable about the space. So I'm watching the show because I'm learning from you, and that's what people should be doing.
Well, I'm looking forward to learning from you, and I'm looking forward to you coming back. But I'm going to be contacting you privately in between to see exactly where we stand, because this is the thing about the cannabis. I don't know exactly how you got to this awareness, but so many of the things that I've been able to do, I was granted this ability through being told there was no other option. So my clock was ticking. I had 10 to 12 months, and I knew it was going to get terribly, awfully shitty before that. And it started off in a bad place, but I thought if I can just bang through 3 or 4 months of research, it's got to be out there. And I started to find things. And then the irony is that, or I don't know if it's irony, let me check on that. Anyway, it feels strange, let's put it this way, to be under the influence of cannabis in a psychoactive aspect of the plant, which ideally, if you can use the whole plant, that's the best idea. I understand there's a case for CBD only. But if you can take it all in, it does so affect your perception. And when you start to think about things in a certain way and see holes in them that I wasn't able to see before taking the cannabis, and it's like its own learning tool as you pop open some new ideas. And then I'm flattered enough to be on my own show now with a man in England who's inventing an adjunct to the stock market to better reflect a new burgeoning economy, who kicked this all off with his own private equity fund, telling me I'm right about things. This is way better than lying in a box 3 years ago. You know what I mean?
I'm with you, Alan, 100%, and I'm glad you've been on that journey, because when you come out the other end, you're stronger. You can tell, you can hear in your voice, you're confident, and you don't have any fear because you've been through stuff that most people haven't been through, and so
nailed it.
So we need to just promote that. We're going to promote the living daylights out of you.
It can happen to me, and I know I wasn't the only person to have this happen to, but I put the feelers out into certain areas. Do you know what it is? There's another website out there we're going to feature some folks from this show on, because I just learned of this yesterday while we researched you. There's a website out there, and I'll get it up by the end of the show, and it helps people come out of the cannabis closet. It isn't the sexuality thing. It's a, hey, I've been using cannabis. I didn't want anybody to know about this because I didn't want to get scorned from the industry that I work in, and I didn't want to get in trouble, and I didn't want anybody to know I had cancer, and I didn't want anybody to know I was scared, and then they're looking at me funny, and I'm losing weight, and some people paranoid enough to think it's contagious, and I just want to keep it quiet. I want to fix it up with this little Rick Simpson oil and try that, and then I'll get back to normal, and then I won't tell anybody, and then I'll be normal again, and then it's just a business as usual. That was my original plan. And the more I started to realize how effective this was and how powerful it was, I didn't have the choice at my fingertips of keeping it a secret. I don't think anybody decent who went through what I went through, and I only say the severe pain aspect of it because, not for sympathy, I'm through that. I'm okay. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. It's okay. I'm saying it because it was so terrible, way, way, way down on the floor, awful. And the recovery was so fantastic. That's why I bring it up, not to get sympathy. I got sympathy at the time from the right people at the time, etc. It's over. I'm not lamenting anything. I'm happy about the fact that the way it went down. I'm grateful about the fact the way it went down. But you need to know just how terrible and just how awful I was in a state of guaranteed not going to make it. And that's okay now. I'm not upset about that anymore. It's even better. If they told me you have stage 2 or stage 1 cancer, etc., I can't promise myself that I would have jumped on the no chemotherapy train and the no radiation train. I probably, there's a good chance I would have gone along with it, even though I'd criticized it in the past. You're at the point, the point where they tell you this bad news, you're going to grab any kind of thing there is. And I was happy, literally happy to not have that choice. I didn't even have to make that decision for myself. I didn't have all my relatives leaning on to me, as so many times a victim of cancer will do. And the relatives go, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to take this. They're not the ones going through the journey. They're suffering from the misperception of what they believe that's based on lies, and they put that on the sick fella who might be more open to discovering his own path out of it due to the pressure of being left in no man's land, literally, while the clock's ticking. You don't know what that feels like until you're in there. So I'm glad to get out and tell people it can be so terrible. That's good news because I was worse than you. You're only stage 1. You're only stage 2. We can try to help you get out of this. And if you follow the plan and understand the things, maybe not everybody gets there, but people do. Not just me, lots of other people. So if you're a celebrity and you want to come out like Olivia Newton-John, etc., and tell us all about it, we want to propagate these facts. And the more we know, the quicker the laws change.
Absolutely right. That's it. Let's get that out there. You touched on another one earlier when you talked about mammograms. I saw a TED talk about mammograms where they're telling you that you have breast cancer and you don't have breast cancer. Then you go and do the chemo and you get cured, and you go into the statistics that say you got cured, and they say, hey, 7 out of 10 are getting cured with the chemotherapy, but you didn't have it in the first place.
Misrepresentation is a key
sad thing.
Tactic. Yeah. Well, that's awful. Well, listen, Edward, I'm going to have to let you go because we're going to wrap up soon. But I'm so happy you came on and that you reached out. And anybody listening, if you're doing anything in the cannabis industry or any type of awareness and you want to get the word out, or maybe your mom's got some problems, dial us up. We're putting the information out. That's the real deal, not the pig squeal from Parliament, etc. And so Edward is here with his new economy. We're going to learn more about this. I'm going to read up on it, and I'm going to have some more pointed questions for you and see if we can get some things going on. But I want to get on board your revolution, and I'm glad that you were able to find us to connect those 2 train cars. So thanks a lot.
Great speaking, John.
Great speaking to you. We'll talk to you soon, Edward. Thanks a bunch.
Okay. Take care, boy.
I like that sound still, that goodbye Skype thing. That's Edward Fitzpatrick. He has his own private hedge fund. That's who that is. And he's transitioning all of the monetary skills and knowledge in 30 years worth of working in the market. He's seen where the holes are. And so I want to read a couple of things on the way out. Let's see if I can get the appropriate soundtrack for this. It's been a bit of a zoo in here with the rain, etc. outside. Let's see how
I just want to dig flowers.
Aren't you glad you didn't need surgery?
Yes, I am. I am glad I didn't need surgery. You just need a big flower because guess what happens? I'm going to read this to you. I've had this in my pocket since show 1, and we just never get to it. And I have to tell you a couple of things. First of all, I want to shut down some naysayers, as I always do. It's part of the job. You got to get the terminology out there. I do not have boobs. mean, I got nipples, and they're on top of my the chest, and they're not any kind of gigantic thing, but they get me through a pickle when I need them to. But I don't have boobs. And this is one of the criticisms or critiques or mistakes, another misinterpretation from people who willingly look, and even intelligent people sometimes will look at words and listen to phrases and twist them around into a ridiculous something or other and throw it back in your face. I'm still dealing with that kind of shit, even at this level of my life. They just make up a bunch of bullshit, stick it on you, you said it, and make fun of that thing. So I don't have boobs. I'm a cannabis user that doesn't have moobs. That's a myth. I think if a cannabis user has moobs, he's the kind of cannabis user who he's only sticking to the couch and the Doritos, and now he's 400 pounds. That's not just the cannabis. That's the nachos, and that's everything else. I want to throw a shout out to Cannabis Oil Facebook success stories on Facebook. Cannabis Oil success stories. Go to that on Facebook. Cannabis Oil Facebook success stories. Once again, if you're kind of a stoner and you just tuned in and you don't know why I'm not making Cheetos gags at this point, it's because this isn't necessarily a stoner show, although we certainly hope they listen, and that's a very well represented entertainment medium in this culture, and everybody's doing a great job of it. And I got my story and my journey and how I want to turn it around and help other people, so I don't goof around too much. But part of the reason is that we're late all the time at 2:03 and a little bit later than that, because it's just hard to get everything going on with this new venture. But it's fun, and it's great, and it's fantastic to still be here and talk about these things, even if they upset me sometimes. But we were just talking to Edward, and it turns out that chemo dramatically increases cancer growth. Am I saying this? Am I coming out and saying that chemo dramatically increases cancer growth? Am I saying that the growth of cancer is fueled by chemotherapy? Is that what I'm actually saying right now? Well, I'm reporting on someone that is. The biphasic effect is well explained by Dr. Dean Black and many other researchers who were trying to figure out why tumors seemed to come back with such a vengeance after chemotherapy. Why? Why are they doing that? Why are they coming back? They tell you to take chemotherapy all the time. Maybe chemotherapy is a good thing. Maybe it is. But a lot of people don't seem to be able to get through it. The numbers are that I was too far gone for chemotherapy. They told me that. Too far gone. Can't help you out. Sorry, it's late. Should have found out earlier when you came to the specialist in September a couple of times and ran a bunch of tests in July and June that year when I was asking these questions about what was going on with my body. And all of it broke down because I don't take cannabis on a regular basis in my body as a food, as a nutrient, affecting my endocannabinoid system, which is attached to my brainstem and everything else up there, including the immune system itself, which chemo decides to flatten and cannabis decides to rejuvenate. Ladies and gentlemen, place your bets. The biphasic effect is well explained by Dr. Dean Black and many other researchers who are trying to figure out why tumors seem to come back with such a vengeance after chemotherapy. Some original work was done by American Cancer Society researcher Robert Shimke in 1985. So just 32 years ago, going on 33 years now, of this information being available somewhere, hidden, sat upon, who discovered that the way cancer cells resist chemotherapy is to replicate even harder and faster. That's what you want to hear from chemotherapy, right? That it's coming harder and faster. That the cancer comes back harder and faster. When you suppress your immune system with the chemotherapy, you kick it down and everything bad dies. So does everything good. Then the good stuff grows back, or so they say, and the bad stuff doesn't, so they say. But if you've ever improperly charged a lithium battery, etc., you know how it never gets back to the full charge again? Neither do you when you do this. And if you got taken out by it when your immune system was at its full, whatever it was at when you were first taken out, chances are when it gets flattened down and raises up again, not quite where it was, the cancer's coming back. The biphasic effect is also called the rebound phenomenon. The drugs attack the tumor cells, which then resist and rebound twice as strong. That's what we're doing with the laws. Now the laws are breaking down, and we are rebounding twice as strong, flipping that telescope again. on this fucking disease with this free medicine. The drugs attack the tumor cells, which then resist and rebound twice as strong, often mutating in the process. In the above study, Robert Shimke, this is bullshit. There's no way the smoking joints can cure all the diseases in there. Nobody said that. In the above study, Robert Shimke noted that with chemo combos, the rebound effect may bring about a tumor cell proliferation rate which may be 100 times faster than before. You ever seen anybody go up like a candle, burn like a wick like that? It's no kind of fun. Lost my mom to this cancer. Just realizing the other day that when I was a younger man at 33, my mom was dying from cancer. And if I fucking knew then what I knew now. Anyway, that was Robert Shimke, Schimke, in his page, Methotrexate Resistance and Gene Amplification. Fun stuff. Cancer 57, May 1986, page 115. So, we got a couple minutes left. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. Going to crush it. We're going to need the Canadian anthem again. Played it last week. It's really old. It's older than the one I remember as a boy. The lyrics are changed. None of it's in French. Sue me. Oh, Canada. What have you done? What have you done, Canada? I'm coming to get you on your 150th birthday. Here's the thing, everybody. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, the former Prime Minister of Canada, who had terms as a majority and minority leader, was there for years, and the previous Liberal government, under Paul Martin, have perpetuated a fraud upon the Canadian people, and I'm calling them out on it right now on the show. Here's the short history of Canadian politics. First, you vote Conservative to get rid of the Liberals. They've been there so long doing things. And then you get angry at the Conservatives because they make mistakes. They take things that aren't theirs. So then you vote Liberal to get rid of the Conservatives. And this is the ridiculous voting game that we were just talking about with our guest today, Edward Fitzpatrick. Because then when you vote the Liberals in, then you get angry at them and you vote them out, and it's a cycle of shit and shame. It's not working properly. And it's all the product of sober minds that have always looked down on the use of cannabis, and we're running things, and this is how it's going to go. And this world's on fire, man. There's wars going on. How could you have a civil war, a flood, and a nuclear war threat going on all the time like that in the States? That's a lot of trauma. Cannabis is good for trauma. But here's what I really want to get to and why I am calling Canada out on this bullshit as we fade on out of here. Here's a new article I just read, and this is why I'm going to call Canada to task. This is in The Guardian again. This is not an opinion, like the earlier story about opioids and the damage they're causing by the very governmental systems that are keeping cannabis away from us. These people are evil, if not stupid, and I'm tired of sitting under it. So here's a great article, finally, in The Guardian. Finally, mainstream. This is so good. Anthony Brown, he's the health editor. This is not an opinion. Cannabis is a wonder drug capable of radically transforming the lives of very sick people, according to the results of the first clinical trials of the drug. And I don't like the word drug, but I get it. Tests sanctioned by the government are proving far more successful than doctors, patients, and cannabis campaigners ever dared hope. Some of the patients are simply calling it a miracle. Taking the drug, which is still illegal for doctors to prescribe, here and there depending on your jurisdiction, but primarily looked down upon and illegal, has allowed a man previously so crippled with pain, me, and others, that he was impotent to become a father, a woman paralyzed by multiple sclerosis to ride a horse for the first time in years, and a man who couldn't sit up in a chair on his own to live without a cane. Been there, done that. Until now, claims of the benefit drug for certain conditions have been anecdotal. But the preliminary results of the UK government trial started last year suggest that 80% of those taking part have derived more benefit from cannabis than any other drug, with many describing it as miraculous, quote-unquote. The results make it almost inevitable that the government will bow to public pressure and legalize the cultivation of cannabis for medical purposes. Scientists now predict that cannabis, first used for medicinal reasons 5,000 years ago in this mainstream Guardian 100% article that was sanctioned by people quite sober, will follow aspirin and penicillin to become a wonder drug prescribed for a wide range of conditions. The very thing I've been made fun of and anybody else. You think it's good for everything? Well, I guess that's the results of this scientific studies. Bowing to pressure for less hardline attitude, the Home Office in England started the first major cannabis trials in the world to see whether there was any scientific basis for its use as medicine. A license was granted to a specially formed drug company to grow the plants under controlled conditions in a secret location in southern England. 23 patients suffering from multiple sclerosis and arthritis were recruited on the first trial and given daily doses of cannabis by spraying it under the tongue before wider trials were started. The remarkable stories of the patients will be revealed on the BBC program Panorama, which was granted unique access to them. Alex Ure, a former paratrooper, suffers from a severe spinal condition. The pain was so bad he considered suicide. He found legal painkillers, opioids, turned him into a zombie, and he couldn't have sex with his wife Wendy for 5 years. On the other hand, neither was I. But after starting the trial, he became a father. I couldn't even bend down and play with a child before. I can do anything now. His doctor, Willie Nutcutt of James Paget Hospital in Great Yarmouth, was sure that cannabis was responsible. I'm saying his doctor was sure that the cannabis was responsible. His pain's been sufficiently controlled to engage in sex again, he said. And then another fella, and then another guy with spasms, and he can sleep, and a woman, and a wife of a chaplain, and suffered badly. And it's a series of anecdotes, but they're all scientifically backed up and say at the end of this thing that the results have exceeded what I dared hope for. We are getting 80% of patients good quality benefit from cannabis. For some, we are getting almost total relief from their pain, with pain scores going down to 0. Doctors believe cannabis could eventually prove useful in conditions such as osteoporosis, cancer, HIV, AIDS, arthritis, spine injury, and certain forms of mental illness, which you have to be to make it illegal. And this is why I was talking about Canada in the first place. This article, this piece of knowledge, was published on Sunday, November 4th, 2001. You fucking bastards. With your laws and your bullshit. And you're going to say, oh, we didn't know about this. Well, then you had no business making such a series of strict rules and laws for the last 16 years that have incarcerated I don't even know how many people and fostered I don't know how much pain. While your sober-minded policies continue to twist this planet into a pretzel of shit. With your fucking laws that don't make sense. And they're oppressive. And people are getting sick and staying there and believing the bullshit about all of these other drugs that are toxic. And this came out in 2001. And the previous liberal government was rolling over like a steamroller any access to cannabis. All of the Harper years and now the Trudeau years, same thing, all of it going against the Parker ruling 2000 where we do so have access to this if the government can't put it together, and the government can't put it together. They're fucking lying about it. 16 years of this? I had to hear from a doctor in 2013 there's nothing you can do? Bone up on your research. You're the doctor, you're the policy setter. You're the politician. And so we're going to put a class action suit. So if you're listening to the show and you're kind of pissed off about this and you lost anybody over the last 16 years, you got hurt, you used it for some kind of thing, you got busted, let's put a class action suit together. I'm going to be stepping up to the Upper Canada Legal Society with a free consultation in the next couple of days, and we'll see what they have to say about this. Because I put it forward right now, and I'm calling it right now, that you guys have known about this stuff and made your repressive policies against it anyway, while you're also sometimes partially investing into these detection schemes that are supposed to find out if we've been using it or not. Yeah, we've been using it. We've been using it a lot. And you're wrong about everything about it when you try to repress it. And all of this is coming out in this 16-year-old, almost entirely 16-year-old newspaper article has undone my anger. I'm unleashed, baby. This is no good anymore, okay? I understand what's going on here, but we're going to fade on out. This has been Green Crush. Thanks for listening. I understand that you're not well. If I understand that you're feeling any kind of strange pains that you can't put my finger on. I don't know. It seems like I'm kind of anything at all. You're likely deficient in cannabis oil. In your endogenous cannabinoid system. That's a heck of a word. It's hard to say. Some people say cannabinoid. Some people say cannabinoid. Most people say, huh? What's that? That is the ladder. That's the little drip, drip, drip at a time that'll take you out of a huge problem. A medical problem that can end your life. And now I'm here, coming back to tell you about it. I feel like I saw stuff on the other side of the curtain, and I'm just trying to share it with you. But for now, we got to go, and we'll see you next week.
Are you a cannabis content creator? Are you looking for a place to have your content seen? If you answer yes to both questions, then you need to check out cbgtv.com. We are the Cannabis Broadcasting Group here at cbgtv.com.